The champagne flutes clinked softly against each other as Camila Rodriguez arranged them on the marble kitchen island, each crystal glass catching the bright morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of their Malibu mansion. Christmas morning had always been her favorite time of year, when their sprawling home filled with laughter and the scent of her famous tres leches cake baking in the oven. But something felt different this year, though she couldn't quite place what it was. At 47, Camila had built an empire from nothing. Her interior design firm, Rodriguez Luxe Interiors, catered to Hollywood's elite and tech billionaires, turning their empty mansions into warm, welcoming homes. Her dark skin glowed with the confidence of a woman who had worked for everything she owned, her natural hair styled in elegant locks that framed her face perfectly. She wore a cream silk blouse and tailored black pants, looking effortlessly sophisticated even on Christmas morning. "Mom, the tree looks incredible this year," called Sophia from the living room, her voice carrying the excited energy of someone who still believed in the magic of Christmas despite being 22. Their daughter had inherited Camila's beauty and Antonio's charm, with caramel-colored skin and bright, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Camila smiled, wiping her hands on a towel as she walked toward the sound of rustling wrapping paper. Their 12-foot Douglas fir stood majestically in the corner of the living room, decorated with gold and silver ornaments that caught the bright California sunshine. Every surface of their home sparkled with tasteful holiday decorations, a testament to Camila's impeccable eye for design. Antonio sat in his leather armchair, still wearing his silk pajamas, scrolling through his phone with the dedication of a man addicted to checking stock prices. At 50, he remained handsome in that distinguished way that made other women look twice, his salt and pepper hair perfectly styled even first thing in the morning. He looked up briefly and smiled at Camila, the same charming smile that had won her heart 25 years ago when they were both struggling to make it in Los Angeles. "Coffee's ready, honey," Camila announced, settling onto the cream-colored sofa and tucking her legs beneath her. "Should we start with presents?" Sophia was already sorting through the carefully wrapped packages under the tree, her movements quick and efficient. "Actually, Mom, I wanted to ask you something first." She paused, holding a silver-wrapped box in her hands. "Did you get your allowance this month? I know Dad sometimes forgets to transfer it, and I wanted to make sure you had enough for the spa weekend we planned." Camila's coffee mug stopped halfway to her lips. "My what?" "Your monthly allowance," Sophia repeated, her voice casual but her eyes watching her mother's face carefully. "The 10,000 Dad transfers to your personal account every month. You know, for your personal expenses and shopping." The words hung in the air like smoke, creating a suffocating silence that seemed to press against Camila's chest. She felt her world tilt slightly, the way it might during an earthquake, when everything familiar suddenly becomes uncertain. $10,000? Monthly allowance? She managed every penny of their household finances, balanced their business accounts, and oversaw their investment portfolio. There was no monthly allowance. "Sophia, sweetheart, I think you might be confused," Camila said slowly, her voice steady despite the growing knot in her stomach. "Your father doesn't give me an allowance. We share all our accounts." But even as she spoke the words, she noticed Antonio had gone completely still in his chair. His phone lay forgotten in his lap, and his face had drained of color so completely that he looked like he might be sick. The charming smile had vanished, replaced by something that looked dangerously close to panic. "Dad." Sophia's voice was small now, uncertain. "You do give Mom her monthly money, right? You told me you've been doing it for years." Antonio's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. His eyes darted between his wife and daughter, and Camila could practically see his mind racing, searching for an explanation that would make sense of this moment. But nothing he could say would explain away the fear written clearly across his features. There must be some confusion," he finally managed, his voice hoarse. "Sophia, you know how your mother handles our finances. She doesn't need me to give her an allowance." But Sophia was shaking her head, her young face creased with worry. "No, Dad, you specifically told me you give Mom 10,000 every month for her personal stuff. You said it was important that she had her own money to spend however she wanted. You've mentioned it tons of times." The room felt like it was spinning around Camila. She set her coffee mug down with trembling hands, her mind racing through possibilities, none of which made any sense. Why would Antonio tell their daughter he was giving her money that she never received? Where was that money actually going? And why did he look like he wanted to disappear into the floor? "Antonio," Camila said, her voice quiet but carrying the weight of 25 years of marriage. "What is Sophia talking about?" Her husband's face was gray now, and she could see a thin line of sweat forming along his hairline despite the cool morning air. His hands gripped the arms of his chair so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. I think there's been a misunderstanding, he whispered, but his words lacked any conviction. He looked like a man caught in a lie so big that he couldn't find his way out of it. Sophia looked between her parents, her excitement about Christmas morning evaporating as she realized she had somehow stepped into the middle of something much bigger than a simple question about money. Mom, are you okay? You look really pale. But Camila wasn't okay. Something was terribly wrong and she could feel it in her bones. 25 years of marriage had taught her to read her husband's moods, and right now, Antonio looked like a man whose carefully constructed world was about to collapse around him. The way he couldn't meet her eyes, the way his hands shook slightly as he reached for his coffee, the way he kept swallowing like his mouth had gone completely dry. Where is the money, Antonio? She asked again, her voice stronger now. If you've been telling Sophia that you give me $10,000 every month, but I've never received it, where has that money been going? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications that made Camila's chest tight with dread. Because suddenly she realized that this wasn't just about missing money. This was about trust, about honesty, about the foundation of everything she thought she knew about her life. And judging by the look of absolute terror on her husband's face, she was about to discover that everything she believed about her marriage was a lie. The silence in the living room stretched until it became unbearable. Camila watched her husband's face cycle through emotions like a broken traffic light, flashing between panic, guilt, and something that looked almost like relief. Sophia had quietly retreated to the kitchen, sensing that her parents needed privacy for whatever was about to unfold. I need to check something, Camila announced, standing abruptly. Her legs felt unsteady, but her voice remained calm. Years of running a successful business had taught her to maintain composure even when everything inside her was screaming. She walked to the home office they shared, her bare feet silent on the cold hardwood floors. The room was a shrine to their success, with awards from design magazines lining the shelves and framed photos of their most prestigious projects covering the walls. But right now, all she could focus on was the massive mahogany desk where Antonio handled what he called the boring financial stuff. Camila had always been grateful that he took care of the tedious paperwork while she focused on the creative side of their business. It had seemed like the perfect partnership. Now, as she pulled open the desk drawers with shaking hands, she wondered how naive she had been. The first drawer contained nothing unusual. Pens, paper clips, business cards from contractors and suppliers. But the second drawer was locked. In 25 years of marriage, Camila had never known Antonio to lock anything in their home. They had always been completely open with each other, or so she had thought. She returned to the living room where Antonio sat frozen in his chair, staring at his hands. Why is your desk drawer locked? She asked. What? He looked up, startled, as if he had forgotten she existed. The second drawer in your desk. It's locked. Why? Antonio's face went even paler, if that was possible. I keep some important documents in there. Business contracts and such. Show me. Camila, please. Can't we discuss this later? It's Christmas morning. But Camila was already walking back toward the office, and she could hear Antonio's reluctant footsteps following behind her. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears, but she forced herself to stay focused. Something was wrong and she needed to know what it was. Open it, she said, standing beside the desk with her arms crossed. Antonio moved like a man walking to his execution. His hands trembled as he pulled a small key from his wallet and inserted it into the lock. The drawer slid open with a soft click, revealing neat stacks of papers and what looked like bank statements. Camila's breath caught in her throat. These weren't business documents. These were personal bank statements from an account she had never seen before. She grabbed the top statement, her eyes scanning the numbers that made no sense. Account holder, Antonio Rodriguez. Monthly deposits, $10,000. Monthly withdrawals, $10,000. All transfers going to an account belonging to someone named Natasha Blake. Who is Natasha Blake? Camila's voice was deadly quiet. Antonio closed his eyes and leaned against the desk as if his legs might give out. She's a real estate agent. Why are you transferring $10,000 every month to a real estate agent? The question hung in the air, but Camila already knew the answer. She could see it in the way her husband's shoulders slumped, in the way he couldn't look at her, in the way 25 years of marriage was crumbling around them like a house built on sand. She's not just a real estate agent, he whispered. Camila's vision blurred for a moment, but she forced herself to keep looking through the papers. There were receipts for expensive dinners at restaurants she had never been to. Hotel bills for weekend trips she had never taken. Credit card statements showing purchases of jewelry she had never received. How long? She asked, her voice barely audible. 3 years. 3 years. While Camila had been building their business, working 60-hour weeks, trusting her husband completely, he had been living a double life. Funding another woman's lifestyle with money that belonged to both of them. The business accounts, she said suddenly, a new wave of horror washing over her. Have you been taking money from the business? Antonio's silence was answer enough. Camila sank into the office chair, her legs finally giving out. Everything she had worked for, everything they had built together, had been contaminated by his lies. She thought about all the times he had praised her for being so focused on work, encouraging her to take on bigger projects, longer hours. Had he been glad to have her distracted so he could steal from their company? Does Sophia know? She asked. She knows I've been giving money to someone I told her was you. She doesn't know about Natasha. So their daughter had been lying too, covering for her father's deception. The betrayal felt like a physical weight pressing down on Camila's chest, making it hard to breathe. I want to see everything, she said, her voice gaining strength. Every statement, every receipt, every lie you've told. I want to know exactly how much you've stolen from us. Antonio nodded miserably and began pulling more documents from the drawer. As the pile of evidence grew on the desk between them, Camila felt something inside her shift. The shock was wearing off, replaced by something colder and more dangerous. She had built her business from nothing by being smarter and working harder than everyone else. She had survived in a competitive industry by never letting anyone take advantage of her. But the one person she had trusted completely had been robbing her blind while she worked to support their family. Get out, she said quietly. What? Get out of this office. Go pack a bag. I want you gone before Sophia has to see any more of this. Antonio started to protest, but something in Camila's eyes stopped him. She looked like a woman who had reached the end of her patience, and he knew better than to push her further. As he left the office, Camila turned back to the papers scattered across the desk. 3 years of deception. Hundreds of thousands of dollars stolen from their business and their family. But as she sat there surrounded by evidence of her husband's betrayal, she wasn't thinking about forgiveness or reconciliation. She was thinking about revenge. Camila spent the next 3 hours going through every document in Antonio's secret drawer, building a timeline of his deception with the same methodical precision she used to design million-dollar homes. By the time she finished, the sun was high in the sky and Christmas morning felt like a distant memory. Sophia appeared in the doorway, her face etched with worry. Mom? Dad left with a suitcase. He said he was going to stay at Uncle Roberto's for a few days. What's happening? Camila looked up at her daughter, seeing Antonio's eyes staring back at her. How much did Sophia really know? How long had she been helping her father maintain this elaborate lie? Sit down, sweetheart. We need to talk. Sophia perched on the edge of the leather chair across from the desk, her hands twisted together in her lap. Is this about the allowance thing? I'm so sorry, Mom. I thought you knew about it. Tell me exactly what your father told you about this money. He said that even though you handled most of the family finances, he wanted to make sure you had your own money that you didn't have to account for to anyone. He said it was important for you to feel independent. Sophia's voice was small, uncertain. He made it sound really sweet, like he was taking care of you. The cruelty of it took Camila's breath away. Antonio had twisted his theft into a romantic gesture, using their daughter as an unwitting accomplice in his deception. Sophia, I want you to understand something very clearly. Your father has never given me any money. Not $10,000 a month, not $10 a month. That money was going somewhere else entirely. She watched her daughter's face as the implications sank in. Sophia was smart, a senior at USC studying business. It didn't take long for her to connect the dots. He was having an affair, Sophia whispered. Yes. For 3 years. Yes. Sophia's face crumpled, and for a moment she looked like the little girl who used to crawl into Camila's lap when she was scared. Mom, I swear I didn't know. I would never have helped him if I had known what he was really doing. Camila stood and walked around the desk to embrace her daughter. Whatever anger she felt towards Sophia's role in this mess, she could see that her daughter was as much a victim of Antonio's lies as she was. I know, baby. I know you didn't mean to hurt me. They held each other for a long moment, both of them crying for the family they had thought they knew. But eventually, Camila pulled away. She had work to do. I need you to do something for me, she said, wiping tears from Sophia's cheeks. I need you to tell me everything you know about this woman, Natasha Blake. Sophia wiped her nose with the back of her hand. I don't know anything about her. Dad never mentioned her name. But. She hesitated. But what? A few months ago I saw Dad at lunch with this woman. Downtown at that expensive place on Rodeo Drive. They looked really comfortable together, like they knew each other well. When I asked him about it later, he said she was a client. What did she look like? Young. Maybe late 20s? Blonde, really pretty. She was wearing this huge diamond necklace that probably cost more than my car. Camila felt a fresh wave of rage wash over her. While she worked 12-hour days to build their business, Antonio was buying jewelry for his mistress with their money. Mom, what are you going to do? I'm going to find out everything there is to know about Natasha Blake. It took less than an hour of internet searching to locate Natasha's real estate office in Beverly Hills. Her photo on the company website confirmed Sophia's description. A beautiful blonde woman with perfect white teeth and the kind of artificial enhancement that screamed expensive maintenance. According to her bio, Natasha specialized in luxury properties and had been with the firm for 4 years. Her social media accounts were a catalog of expensive vacations, designer clothes and champagne-fueled parties at exclusive clubs. All of it funded by money stolen from Camila's business. But what made Camila's blood run cold was a photo posted just 2 weeks ago. Natasha standing in front of a mirror, showing off a diamond tennis bracelet that Camila recognized immediately. It was identical to one she had admired in a jewelry store window 6 months ago, pointing it out to Antonio during a rare dinner date. He had bought it for his mistress instead. Camila screenshot every photo, saved every post and printed out everything she could find. If Antonio thought he could destroy their marriage and steal from their business without consequences, he was about to learn how wrong he was. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. Rodriguez Lux Interiors, this is Rachel speaking. Rachel, it's Camila. I need you to come over. And bring your law degree. Rachel Martinez had been Camila's best friend since college and had served as the company's legal counsel since they incorporated. She was also one of the sharpest family law attorneys in California, though she usually focused on business contracts. What's wrong? You sound terrible. Antonio's been having an affair. He's been stealing money from the business to pay for it. I need to know what my options are. The silence on the other end of the line lasted so long that Camila thought the call had dropped. I'll be there in an hour, Rachel finally said. Don't do anything until I get there. But as Camila hung up the phone and stared at the photos of Natasha Blake scattered across her desk, she realized she had already made her decision. This wasn't going to be a quiet divorce where they split everything down the middle and wished each other well. This was going to be war. Rachel arrived exactly 1 hour later, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun and her briefcase clutched tightly in her manicured hands. As Camila's business attorney and closest friend, she had seen her through every major decision of the past 15 years. But she had never seen the look of cold fury that currently burned in Camila's dark eyes. Show me everything, Rachel said without preamble, setting her briefcase on the coffee table and pulling out a legal pad. Camila spread the evidence across the dining room table like pieces of a puzzle that revealed a picture too ugly to believe. Bank statements showing 3 years of monthly transfers. Credit card bills for romantic dinners and weekend getaways. Screenshots of Natasha Blake's social media accounts, documenting a lifestyle that exceeded her real estate commissions by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Rachel studied each document with the focused intensity of a surgeon, making notes and asking pointed questions. Her expression grew darker with each new piece of evidence. This is bad, Camila. Really bad. He's not just cheating, he's embezzling from your business. How much are we talking about? Rachel's calculator clicked rapidly as she added up 3 years of theft. Based on what you've shown me here, at least $360,000. Probably more if we audit the business accounts thoroughly. The number hit Camila like a physical blow. $360,000 of their money, stolen to fund another woman's luxury lifestyle while she worked herself to exhaustion building their company. What are my legal options? Divorce, obviously. But given the embezzlement, we're also looking at potential criminal charges. California doesn't mess around with financial crimes, especially when it involves this much money. Rachel's phone rang, interrupting their conversation. She glanced at the caller ID and frowned. It's Antonio. Camila's stomach clenched. Don't answer it. But Rachel was already swiping to accept the call, putting it on speaker. Antonio's voice filled the room, and Camila was struck by how normal he sounded, as if this was just another day and he wasn't currently destroying their family. Rachel, thank God. Is Camila there? She won't answer my calls. She's here, Antonio. And she's shown me everything. The silence stretched for so long that Camila thought he had hung up. When he finally spoke, his voice was small and broken. I know how this looks, but it's not what you think. Really? Rachel's voice was arctic. Because it looks like you've been stealing money from your wife's business to fund your affair. What part of that am I misunderstanding? I was going to pay it all back. I just needed more time. Camila couldn't stay silent any longer. 3 years, Antonio. You've been lying to me for 3 years. How much more time did you need? Camila, please. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. I love you. I've always loved you. The words that might have melted her heart a week ago now made her feel sick. If you loved me, you wouldn't have stolen from me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have bought another woman the jewelry I wanted. If you loved me, you wouldn't have used our daughter to cover up your lies. I never meant for Sophia to get involved. I was trying to protect you from the truth. The truth? Camila's voice rose dangerously. The truth is that while I was working 16-hour days to build our business, you were living a double life with money that belonged to both of us. The truth is that every time you encouraged me to take on another project, to work another weekend, you were glad to have me distracted so you could continue stealing from me. That's not fair. Fair? Camila stood up so abruptly that her chair fell backward. You want to talk about fair? Let me tell you what's fair. Fair is you facing the consequences of your choices. Fair is me taking everything that's rightfully mine and leaving you with nothing. Rachel placed a warning hand on Camila's arm, but Camila was beyond caring about legal strategy. 25 years of trust and love had been revealed as a sham, and she wanted Antonio to understand exactly how much he had lost. I built this business, Antonio. I designed every project, managed every client, created every success we've had. You handled paperwork and stole my money. That's not a partnership, that's theft. We built it together, Camila. You can't just take everything. Watch me. She ended the call with a vicious swipe of her finger and turned back to Rachel, who was watching her with a mixture of admiration and concern. I want to destroy him, Camila said quietly. I want him to lose everything the same way he made me lose everything. Camila, I understand you're angry. I'm not angry, Rachel. I'm done. I'm done being the wife who trusted blindly. I'm done being the business partner who worked while he stole. I'm done being the woman who believed in a marriage that only existed in my imagination. Rachel nodded slowly. Okay, then let's talk strategy. If you want to win this war, we need to be smart about it. They spent the next 4 hours planning Camila's complete destruction of Antonio's life. Every asset they owned together would be evaluated and divided. Every business account would be audited to determine the full extent of his theft. Every lie he had told would be documented and used against him in court. But more than that, they would make sure that everyone in their industry knew exactly what kind of man Antonio Rodriguez was. His reputation would be destroyed, his business contacts would abandon him, and his ability to work in Los Angeles would be eliminated. This is going to get ugly, Rachel warned as she packed up her briefcase. Are you sure you're ready for that? Camila looked around the home she had decorated with such love and care, thinking about the business she had built with such pride and dedication, remembering the marriage she had believed in with her whole heart. He made it ugly the day he decided to steal from me, she said. I'm just going to make sure everyone else can see it too. As Rachel left, Camila walked back to the office and sat down at the desk where she had discovered the truth about her marriage. Tomorrow she would begin the methodical process of taking back everything that belonged to her. But tonight she was going to plan exactly how to make Antonio pay for every lie he had told and every dollar he had stolen. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect California day that usually made Camila grateful to live in Los Angeles. But as she sat at her kitchen table, sipping coffee and reviewing the notes she and Rachel had made the night before, she felt nothing but cold determination. Sophia appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, her eyes red from crying. Mom, I keep thinking about everything Dad told me over the past few years. How many other lies were there? Probably more than we'll ever know, baby. But that's not your burden to carry. Sophia sat down across from her mother, wrapping her hands around a mug of hot chocolate. What happens now? Now we take back what belongs to us. Camila had spent most of the night awake, not from emotional devastation but from strategic planning. Her years of running a business had taught her that revenge was best served methodically, with careful attention to detail and perfect timing. Antonio thought he had been clever, hiding his affair and his theft for 3 years. But he had made one crucial mistake. He had underestimated his wife. The first step was securing their business assets before Antonio realized what was happening. Rodriguez Lux Interiors was incorporated in California, with both Antonio and Camila listed as equal partners. But Camila's name was on every major client contract, every design patent, every trademark that gave the company its value. The business existed because of her talent, her reputation, and her relationships with their wealthy clientele. She picked up her phone and dialed their business manager, James Chin. "Camila, Merry Christmas. How are you enjoying your holiday?" "James, I need you to do something for me urgently. I need you to change all the passwords on our business accounts and remove Antonio's access to our banking." The silence that followed was so long that Camila wondered if the call had dropped. That's a very unusual request, Camila. Is everything all right? Antonio has been embezzling money from the business. I have documentation proving he's stolen at least $360,000 over the past 3 years. Jesus Christ. James's professional composure cracked completely. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. And I need you to lock down everything before he realizes I know about it. I'll need some time to. James, I need this done today. If Antonio accesses our accounts and transfers more money, we could lose everything." She could hear James typing rapidly on his computer. "Okay, I can change the banking passwords and remove his electronic access. But Camila, he's still legally a co-owner of the business. If he shows up at the bank in person, then you call me immediately." After hanging up with James, Camila drove to their Beverly Hills office building. Rodriguez Lux Interiors occupied the entire 20th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of the city below. She had chosen this location specifically for the natural light that flooded the space, creating the perfect environment for showcasing fabric samples and design plans. But today she wasn't admiring the view. She was systematically going through every file cabinet, every computer, every piece of documentation that proved the business belonged to her. She photographed client contracts that bore her signature exclusively, copied design portfolios that showcased her work, and documented the awards and recognition that had been earned by her talent alone. Most importantly, she began reaching out to their most valuable clients. The first call was to Patricia Steinberg, wife of a Hollywood studio executive whose Bel Air mansion had been featured in Architectural Digest after Camila's renovation. "Camila, darling. How wonderful to hear from you. I hope you're having a lovely Christmas. Patricia, I'm calling to let you know about some changes happening with Rodriguez Lux Interiors. I wanted you to hear it from me directly." She spent the next 20 minutes carefully explaining that Antonio would no longer be associated with the business, without going into the sordid details of his theft and affair. Patricia, like most of their wealthy clients, cared only about results and discretion. As long as Camila remained in charge of their projects, they would continue working with the company. By the end of the day, Camila had secured the loyalty of their 15 most important clients, representing over $2 million in annual revenue. She had also changed the locks on the office, updated their business registration to list her as the primary contact, and begun the process of legally removing Antonio from all company documents. But the most satisfying part of her day came when she visited their bank in person. "Mrs. Rodriguez," the branch manager greeted her warmly. "What can I do for you today?" "I need to open a new business account, separate from the joint account my husband and I currently share." She transferred half of their business funds into the new account, carefully documenting every transaction for her attorney. Legally, she was entitled to take much more, but she wanted to be above reproach when their divorce went to court. As she drove home that evening, Camila felt a sense of satisfaction she hadn't experienced in years. For the first time in their marriage, she was the one with all the information and all the power. Antonio still believed she was heartbroken and confused, waiting for him to come home and explain away his betrayal. He had no idea that she was systematically dismantling his life with the same precision she used to design multimillion-dollar homes. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Natasha." Camila stared at the message for a long moment, then smiled coldly. Apparently, Antonio's mistress had finally realized that her monthly allowance was about to disappear. But if Natasha Blake thought she could intimidate or manipulate Camila into preserving her lifestyle, she was about to learn otherwise. Camila deleted the message without responding. Let Natasha wonder and worry. Let her realize that the comfortable life she had been living on stolen money was about to end. Tomorrow the real war would begin. Camila woke up the next morning with a clarity she hadn't felt in months. The shock and devastation of discovering Antonio's betrayal had crystallized into something much more dangerous, a plan for complete victory. She dressed carefully in a charcoal gray suit that made her look every inch the successful businesswoman she was, then drove to meet the first ally in her campaign to destroy her cheating husband. Miguel Rodriguez owned the most successful private investigation firm in Los Angeles, specializing in corporate fraud and infidelity cases for the city's wealthy elite. He was also Camila's younger brother, which meant he had personal reasons to want to destroy Antonio beyond his usual professional satisfaction. "I always knew that man was too smooth," Miguel said as he reviewed the evidence Camila had brought to his downtown office. 25 years, and he never once looked at you the way a man should look at his wife. You never said anything. What was I supposed to say? Hey sister, I think your husband might be a cheating bastard? You seemed happy. Miguel was 2 years younger than Camila but looked older, his face weathered by years of following unfaithful spouses and tracking down missing assets. His office was spartanly decorated, all function and no warmth, which suited his personality perfectly. "How much do you already know about this Natasha Blake?" Camila asked. Miguel pulled out a thick folder and spread its contents across his desk. "I started investigating the minute you called yesterday. Natasha Blake, 28 years old, originally from Phoenix. She moved to Los Angeles 4 years ago and got her real estate license 6 months later. What did she do before real estate? Cocktail waitress at high-end clubs in Vegas. No college degree, no family money, no obvious source of income beyond her commissions. But here's where it gets interesting." Miguel pulled out photographs of Natasha at various expensive restaurants and exclusive events, always accompanied by older, wealthy-looking men. "She's got a pattern. She targets married men with money, gets them to pay for her lifestyle, then moves on when they get too attached or their wives get suspicious." "How many men?" "At least 3 that I've documented so far. A plastic surgeon from Beverly Hills, a tech executive from Silicon Valley, and a real estate developer from Manhattan Beach. All married, all wealthy, all kept her as a mistress for between 2 and 4 years. Camila felt her stomach turn. Antonio wasn't special to Natasha. He was just her latest mark, another wealthy fool willing to bankrupt his family for the attention of a beautiful young woman. "There's more," Miguel continued. "She's not just spending the money Antonio gives her. She's been blackmailing her previous lovers, threatening to expose their affairs unless they continue paying her even after their relationships end." The implications hit Camila like a lightning bolt. "She's going to try to blackmail Antonio." "Probably. And when she does, he's going to come running back to you for help." But Camila was shaking her head before Miguel finished speaking. "He can rot in hell before I lift a finger to help him with anything." Miguel smiled, the cold expression of a man who had seen too many betrayals not to appreciate a good revenge story. "That's my sister. So what do you want me to do?" "I want you to document everything. Every restaurant they've been to, every hotel they've stayed at, every gift he's bought her with our money. I want a complete timeline of their relationship that will hold up in court." "Consider it done. What else?" Camila pulled out her phone and showed Miguel the text message Natasha had sent the day before. "She wants to talk to me. I want you to be there when she does." "Absolutely not. That's too dangerous." "Miguel, I didn't survive 25 years in the design business by being afraid of difficult conversations. If she thinks she can intimidate me into keeping quiet about Antonio's theft, she's wrong." They spent the next hour planning how to handle the inevitable confrontation with Natasha. Then Camila drove across town to meet her second ally in the war against Antonio. Dr. Elena Vasquez was the most sought-after therapist in Los Angeles, treating everyone from A-list actors to tech billionaires for everything from anxiety to addiction. She was also Camila's therapist, had been for the past 5 years, helping her navigate the stress of running a demanding business while maintaining a marriage and raising a daughter. "I have to admit, I'm not entirely surprised," Elena said as Camila finished explaining the previous 3 days. "You've mentioned several times over the past year that Antonio seemed distant, distracted. You said he was working more but you never saw evidence of new clients or projects." Camila sank deeper into the familiar leather chair in Elena's office, feeling the weight of all the signs she had ignored. "I trusted him completely. I never questioned where he was going or what he was doing. Trust isn't the same thing as naivety, Camila. A marriage should be based on trust. The fact that he violated that trust doesn't make you foolish for giving it. But I feel so stupid. All those times he encouraged me to work late, to take on bigger projects, to focus on growing the business. He was just keeping me distracted so I wouldn't notice what he was doing." Elena leaned forward, her expression serious. "Listen to me very carefully. Antonio's betrayal is about his character, not yours. His theft is about his choices, not your blindness. His lies are about his weakness, not your trust." The words helped, but Camila still felt the sting of humiliation. I just keep thinking about all the people who probably knew. All the times he must have been laughing at me behind my back. Maybe. Or maybe he was terrified that you would find out, which is why he tried so hard to keep you distracted. Either way, it doesn't matter now. What matters is how you move forward. They talked for another 40 minutes about grief, anger, and the process of rebuilding a life after betrayal. When Camila left Elena's office, she felt emotionally stronger but also more determined than ever to make Antonio pay for what he had done. Her phone rang as she sat in her car in the parking garage. Mrs. Rodriguez? This is James Chin. I think we have a problem. Camila's blood ran cold. What kind of problem? Antonio just showed up at the bank. He's demanding access to the business accounts, and he's threatening to sue the bank if they don't give it to him. Did they let him in? No, but he's making a scene. He's claiming you've stolen money from him and that he's going to have you arrested for embezzlement. The audacity of it took Camila's breath away. Antonio was so desperate to continue funding his affair that he was willing to accuse his wife of the very crime he had been committing for 3 years. James, I need you to call our attorney immediately. And I need you to document everything Antonio says and does. If he wants to make this a public battle, then that's exactly what he's going to get. As she hung up the phone, Camila realized that the careful, methodical approach she had been planning was no longer possible. Antonio had forced her hand by involving their bank and their business associates. It was time to stop playing defense and go on the attack. Camila arrived at the bank 20 minutes later to find Antonio pacing in the parking lot, his phone pressed to his ear and his voice loud enough to attract stares from other customers. He looked like a man on the edge of a complete breakdown, his usually perfect hair disheveled and his expensive suit wrinkled. She sat in her car for a moment, watching her husband of 25 years make a fool of himself in public, and felt nothing but disgust. This was the man she had loved, trusted, and built a life with. This desperate, pathetic creature who was screaming at bank employees because they wouldn't let him steal more money to fund his affair. James Chin appeared at her passenger door, looking harried and embarrassed. Camila, thank God you're here. He's been here for an hour and he's threatening to call the police. Let him call them, Camila said calmly. I have documentation of every dollar he's stolen. Let him explain to the officers why he needs access to money he's been embezzling. She got out of her car and walked toward the bank entrance, ignoring Antonio completely even though he immediately ended his phone call and hurried after her. Camila, stop. We need to talk about this. She kept walking. You can't just lock me out of our business accounts. I'm a co-owner of the company. She pushed through the glass doors into the bank's marble lobby. Camila, please. I know you're angry, but you're making a mistake. Finally, she turned to face him, and the expression on her face was so cold that he actually took a step backward. The only mistake I made was trusting you for 25 years, she said quietly. But I'm not making that mistake anymore. The bank manager, a nervous man in his 50s, approached them cautiously. Mrs. Rodriguez, perhaps we could continue this conversation in my office? That won't be necessary, Camila replied, her voice carrying clearly through the lobby. Mr. Rodriguez is no longer authorized to access any accounts associated with Rodriguez Lux Interiors. If he continues to harass your employees, please call security. She turned and walked out of the bank, leaving Antonio standing in the lobby surrounded by curious onlookers. But instead of going home, she drove straight to the Rodriguez Lux Interiors office building. It was time to make her takeover of the business official. The building's security guard recognized her immediately. Good afternoon, Mrs. Rodriguez. Working on the holiday? Something like that, Thomas. I need you to do me a favor. If Mr. Rodriguez tries to come up to our office today, please call me before letting him access the elevator. Thomas had worked security in the building for 8 years and had seen enough corporate drama to read between the lines. Of course, ma'am. No problem at all. Camila took the elevator to the 20th floor and used her key card to enter the Rodriguez Lux Interiors offices. The space was quiet and empty, exactly as it should be during the week between Christmas and New Year's. But today the silence felt different. It felt like hers. She walked through the reception area, past the conference rooms where she had met with countless clients, past the design studios where she had created spaces that had been featured in magazines around the world. Every success, every award, every moment of recognition had been earned by her talent and her work. Antonio had handled contracts and scheduling, important but replaceable functions that any competent administrator could manage. But the creative vision, the client relationships, the reputation that allowed them to charge premium prices, all of that belonged to Camila. Her first call was to their corporate attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Wong who specialized in business partnerships. Patricia, I need to discuss dissolving my partnership with Antonio. I want to buy out his share of the company. That's going to be complicated, Camila. Partnership dissolution usually requires both parties to agree on the terms. What if one partner has been embezzling from the business? The silence on the other end of the line stretched for several seconds. That changes things significantly. How much money are we talking about? Camila gave Patricia the same figures she had shared with Rachel, watching through her office window as the sun set over Los Angeles. I want him completely removed from the business. I want his name taken off the company registration, the office lease, the trademark filings, everything. If you can prove embezzlement, that's definitely possible. In fact, it's likely that a judge would order him to forfeit his ownership stake as restitution for the money he stole. How long will it take? If we file an emergency petition and can demonstrate that he poses a continuing threat to the business assets, we could have a preliminary ruling within a week. Perfect. By the time Antonio realized what was happening, it would be too late for him to mount an effective defense. Her second call was to the building's property management company. Rodriguez Lux Interiors had a 5-year lease on the entire 20th floor, but Camila wanted to make sure Antonio couldn't access the space while their legal battle played out. I need to add additional security measures to our office, she explained to the property manager. I want Mr. Antonio Rodriguez removed from the approved access list, and I want to be notified immediately if he attempts to enter the building. Is this a domestic situation, Mrs. Rodriguez? It's a business dispute. Mr. Rodriguez is no longer associated with Rodriguez Lux Interiors, and I need to protect our client files and confidential information. Her third call was to their insurance company, reporting Antonio's embezzlement and beginning the process of filing a claim for the stolen funds. If she could prove that Antonio's theft had damaged the business, she might be able to recover some of the money through their corporate insurance policy. By the time she finished making calls, it was dark outside and the building was nearly empty. But Camila felt energized in a way she hadn't experienced in years. For the first time in her marriage, she was in complete control of her own destiny. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Stop what you're doing or you'll regret it. Natasha. Camila stared at the message for a moment, then began typing her response. Try me. She hit send and waited. Within 30 seconds her phone rang. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Natasha's voice was honey sweet but with an edge of steel underneath. Actually, I know exactly who I'm dealing with, Camila replied calmly. A woman who makes her living blackmailing married men. A woman who has destroyed multiple families for money. A woman who is about to learn that she picked the wrong wife to threaten. Antonio loves me. He's going to leave you anyway. Then he can support you with his own money. But he's not getting another penny of mine. She hung up and immediately forwarded the threatening text message to her brother Miguel. Let Natasha Blake try to intimidate her. Let her make all the threats she wanted. Camila had spent 25 years building a business empire, and she wasn't about to let some gold-digging blackmailer destroy what she had worked so hard to create. Tomorrow she would begin the final phase of her plan, making sure that everyone in their industry knew exactly what kind of man Antonio Rodriguez really was. The annual Rodriguez Lux Interiors holiday party had been scheduled for December 28 for the past 10 years, always held at the Beverly Hills Hotel's Crystal Ballroom. It was the social event of the year for Los Angeles's interior design community, attended by their most important clients, industry colleagues and influential members of the media. Camila had considered canceling the party after discovering Antonio's betrayal, but as she sat in her office reviewing the guest list, she realized it presented the perfect opportunity for revenge. Everyone who mattered in their business world would be in one room, expecting to celebrate another successful year for the Rodriguez partnership. Instead, they were going to witness its spectacular destruction. She spent the morning of the party making final preparations, coordinating with Miguel to ensure they had all the evidence they needed and reviewing her presentation with Rachel to make sure every legal detail was perfect. Are you sure about this? Rachel asked as they stood in Camila's home office, surrounded by blown-up photographs of bank statements and printed copies of Antonio's credit card receipts. Once you do this publicly, there's no taking it back. Good, Camila replied, adjusting the collar of her midnight blue dress. She had chosen the outfit carefully, elegant, professional, and commanding. Tonight, she needed to look like a woman in complete control of her destiny. I want everyone to know exactly what kind of man they've been doing business with. The Crystal Ballroom was already crowded when Camila arrived at 7 o'clock. The usual suspects were there, Patricia Steinberg holding court near the bar, discussing her latest renovation project. The Hollywood power couple whose Malibu beach house had been featured on the cover of Elle Decor. The tech billionaire who had hired them to design his company's new headquarters. But more importantly, the room was filled with reporters from Architectural Digest, House Beautiful, and the Los Angeles Times home section. These were the people who could make or break a design firm's reputation with a single article. Antonio was already there, working the room with his usual charm, apparently believing that he could somehow salvage his reputation and his access to their business accounts. He had brought Natasha as his date, introducing her as his business associate to anyone who asked. Camila watched from across the room as Natasha clung to Antonio's arm, playing the role of sophisticated professional while wearing a dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Every piece of jewelry she wore, every designer accessory she carried, had been purchased with money stolen from Camila's business. "Ladies and gentlemen," Camila said, tapping her champagne glass with a silver spoon. The conversations around the ballroom gradually quieted as people turned their attention to the woman they had come to celebrate. "Thank you all for joining us tonight for what has become a treasured annual tradition." She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the room until it landed on Antonio. His face was flushed with champagne and confidence, clearly expecting her to deliver the usual speech about their successful partnership and bright future. "Tonight, I want to talk to you about trust," Camila continued, her voice carrying clearly through the ballroom's excellent acoustics. "About the foundation that makes any successful business relationship possible." Miguel appeared at the back of the room, wheeling in a projector screen and laptop computer. Several guests looked confused, but they remained politely attentive. "For 25 years, I believe that Rodriguez Lux Interiors was built on a partnership based on mutual respect, shared goals, and absolute honesty." The projector hummed to life, displaying the Rodriguez Lux Interiors logo on the screen. But then the image changed to show a bank statement, the numbers large enough for everyone in the ballroom to read clearly. "Unfortunately, I recently discovered that my business partner has been embezzling money from our company for the past 3 years. The silence in the ballroom was deafening. Camila could see shock and confusion spreading across the faces of their guests, but she also noticed several people pulling out their phones to record what was clearly about to become a major scandal. "The evidence is quite clear," she continued as Miguel advanced to the next slide, showing Antonio's secret bank account and the monthly transfers to Natasha Blake. $360,000, stolen from client fees and project budgets to fund an extramarital affair. Antonio had gone completely white, but he hadn't moved from his position near the bar. Natasha, however, was edging toward the exit, clearly recognizing that the evening was not going to end well for her. "The woman he has brought as his guest tonight," Camila said, gesturing toward Natasha, "has been the recipient of this stolen money, using it to maintain a lifestyle far beyond her means as a real estate agent." Now people were definitely recording, and Camila could see the reporters in the audience scribbling furiously in their notebooks. This story would be in tomorrow's papers, and by the end of the week, everyone in the Los Angeles design community would know that Antonio Rodriguez was a thief and an adulterer. "Effective immediately," Camila announced, "Antonio Rodriguez is no longer associated with Rodriguez Lux Interiors in any capacity. All current and future projects will be completed under my sole direction, with the same standards of excellence you have come to expect." She clicked to the final slide, which showed the company's new logo, simply Camila Rodriguez Interiors in elegant script. "I apologize for any inconvenience this may cause, but I believe you all deserve to know the truth about who you're doing business with." The ballroom erupted in whispered conversations as Camila stepped down from the small stage. She could see Patricia Steinberg pushing through the crowd toward her, probably wanting to confirm that her ongoing projects wouldn't be affected by the scandal. But before she could reach the influential socialite, Antonio appeared in front of her, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. "How dare you?" he hissed, grabbing her arm. "You just destroyed my career, my reputation, everything I've worked for." Camila looked down at his hand on her arm, then back up at his face with an expression of complete disdain. "You destroyed your own reputation when you decided to steal from our clients to pay for your mistress. I just made sure everyone knew about it. You vindictive bitch. I'll sue you for slander, for defamation, for everything you've got." "With what money?" Camila asked sweetly. "Your legal bills will be quite expensive, and you no longer have access to our business accounts." Security guards appeared at Antonio's sides, summoned by Miguel, who had anticipated this exact confrontation. "Sir, you need to leave the premises immediately." As Antonio was escorted from the ballroom, still shouting threats and accusations, Camila turned her attention back to their guests. Many of them looked uncomfortable, clearly unsure how to react to such an unprecedented public humiliation. But Patricia Steinberg had finally reached her, and the older woman's expression was one of grudging admiration. "Well," she said, raising her champagne glass in a mock toast, "that was certainly memorable. I assume my powder room renovation is still on schedule?" Camila smiled, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. "Absolutely. In fact, I think you'll find my personal attention to your project will be even more focused now that I don't have to worry about my business partner stealing from your budget." As the evening progressed, Camila was amazed to discover that most of their clients and colleagues were supportive rather than scandalized. They had always known that she was the creative force behind Rodriguez Luxe Interiors, and they were more concerned about maintaining their business relationships than they were about Antonio's dramatic exit. By the time the party ended, Camila had secured commitments from every major client to continue working with her new company, and she had been approached by several reporters who wanted to interview her for follow-up stories about business fraud and corporate betrayal. As she walked to her car in the hotel parking garage, her phone rang. It was Miguel. "That was beautiful, sister. Absolutely beautiful. You just ended his career in this city." "Good," Camila replied, feeling no guilt whatsoever about the destruction she had just unleashed. "He should have thought about the consequences before he decided to steal from me. What's your next move?" Camila looked back at the Beverly Hills Hotel, thinking about the conversations she had just had with some of the most influential people in Los Angeles society. "Now I wait for him to come crawling back, begging me to save him from the mess he's created. And then I'm going to tell him exactly what I think of his apologies." The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters when Camila arrived for the final day of their divorce proceedings 3 months later. The story of Antonio's public humiliation had become something of a sensation in Los Angeles society circles, spawning articles in trade publications and gossip columns alike. Camila had become an unlikely feminist icon, the successful businesswoman who had destroyed her cheating husband's career with surgical precision. Women's magazines had featured her story as an example of how to reclaim power after betrayal, and she had been invited to speak at several professional conferences about business ethics and partnership accountability. But today wasn't about her growing reputation as a role model for scorned wives. Today was about legal justice and financial restitution for 3 years of theft and deception. Rachel met her at the courthouse entrance, looking every inch the victorious attorney in her perfectly tailored black suit. "Are you ready for this?" "I've been ready for months," Camila replied. She had dressed carefully for the occasion, choosing a charcoal gray dress that projected both professionalism and quiet strength. After months of legal maneuvering, today would finally see the end of her marriage and the beginning of her completely independent life. The courtroom was packed with observers, including several reporters who had been following the case since Camila's dramatic revelation at the holiday party. Antonio sat at the defendant's table with his attorney, a tired-looking man who had clearly realized early in the proceedings that his client's case was hopeless. Judge Sandra Martinez had a reputation for no-nonsense efficiency and little patience for financial crimes, especially those involving domestic betrayal. She reviewed the final settlement documents with the thoroughness of someone who understood that this case would likely set precedents for similar situations. "Mr. Rodriguez," the judge said, looking over her reading glasses at Antonio, "do you understand the terms of this settlement agreement?" Antonio's voice was barely audible. "Yes, Your Honor. You are forfeiting your ownership stake in Rodriguez Luxe Interiors, now operating as Camila Rodriguez Interiors, as restitution for the documented embezzlement of business funds. You are also agreeing to pay your former wife additional alimony in the amount of $5,000 per month for 10 years. Camila watched her ex-husband's shoulders slump as the judge read the terms that would govern the rest of his life. The man who had once commanded respect in their industry now looked broken and defeated, a shadow of the charming entrepreneur she had married 25 years earlier. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Judge Martinez continued, "you are receiving full ownership of the family business, the Beverly Hills home, the Malibu vacation property, and 70% of all other marital assets. Do you find these terms acceptable?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Mr. Rodriguez, I want to make something very clear to you. The evidence presented in this case shows a pattern of financial abuse that went on for 3 years. You stole money from your wife's business to fund an extramarital relationship, and you used your own daughter to help cover up your crimes." Antonio flinched at the judge's words, but he didn't try to defend himself. There was no defense for what he had done. In addition to the civil penalties outlined in this settlement, I am forwarding the evidence of your embezzlement to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution. You may face additional charges of corporate fraud and tax evasion. This was news to Camila, and she felt a surge of satisfaction at the judge's words. Antonio wouldn't just lose his business and his reputation. He would spend the next several years looking over his shoulder, wondering if criminal charges were coming. This court is adjourned. As people began filing out of the courtroom, Camila remained seated for a moment, letting the reality of her victory sink in. She had not just survived Antonio's betrayal, she had used it to reclaim complete control of her life and her business. Rachel was beaming as they walked toward the courthouse exit. That was even better than I hoped. Complete financial victory, plus the possibility of criminal charges. You've made legal history here, Camila. Outside on the courthouse steps, reporters immediately surrounded them with questions and camera flashes. Camila had given several interviews over the past months, but today felt different. Today she was speaking as a completely free woman. Mrs. Rodriguez, how does it feel to have won such a complete victory against your ex-husband? It feels like justice, Camila replied simply. No one should be able to steal from their spouse and destroy their family without facing consequences. What's next for your business? Camila Rodriguez Interiors is stronger than ever. We're expanding into commercial projects and hiring additional designers to meet growing demand. It turns out that clients appreciate working with someone they can trust completely. Any advice for other women who might be facing similar situations? Camila paused, thinking about all the women who had reached out to her over the past months, sharing their own stories of financial betrayal and marital deception. Document everything. Protect your assets. And don't let anyone convince you that you're being vindictive for demanding justice. You built your life through hard work and trust, and you deserve to keep everything you've earned. As the reporters dispersed and Rachel headed back to her office, Camila stood alone on the courthouse steps, looking out at the city where she had built her empire. Los Angeles stretched out before her, full of possibilities and potential clients who would respect her talent and her integrity. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Sophia, who was finishing her final semester at USC. Mom, I saw the news coverage. I'm so proud of you. Dinner tonight to celebrate? Camila smiled and typed back quickly. Absolutely. Pick the restaurant. Money is no object. For the first time in 25 years, that was literally true. Every dollar she spent would be her own, earned through her own work and protected by legal documents that no one could challenge. As she walked to her car, Camila thought about Antonio, probably sitting in some cheap apartment, trying to figure out how to rebuild a career that she had systematically destroyed. She felt no sympathy for him whatsoever. He had made his choices and now he was facing the consequences. But more than that, she felt grateful. Antonio's betrayal had forced her to discover strength she didn't know she possessed and to reclaim parts of herself that she had lost during their marriage. She was no longer half of a partnership. She was a complete person, building a business that belonged entirely to her. The future had never looked brighter. 1 year later, Camila stood in the same crystal ballroom where she had publicly destroyed Antonio's reputation, but this time the atmosphere was purely celebratory. The first annual Camila Rodriguez Interiors Client Appreciation Gala was in full swing, attended by an even more impressive guest list than their old holiday parties had ever attracted. The business had grown by 40% since she had taken sole control, with new clients coming to her specifically because of her reputation for integrity and creative excellence. The scandal that had destroyed her marriage had, paradoxically, enhanced her professional standing. People wanted to work with someone who valued honesty and demanded accountability. Mom, you look incredible, Sophia said, appearing at her side with 2 glasses of champagne. At 23, her daughter had graduated summa cum laude from USC and was now working as Camila's business development manager, bringing fresh ideas and youthful energy to the company. Camila accepted the champagne and surveyed the ballroom, noting how many faces were new since last year's dramatic revelation. Word had spread throughout California's wealthy communities that Camila Rodriguez was the interior designer to hire if you wanted both exceptional work and complete trustworthiness. Have I mentioned lately how proud I am of you? Sophia continued. Not just for how you handled Dad's betrayal, but for everything you've built since then. The relationship with her daughter had taken months to fully heal, but they were closer now than they had ever been during Camila's marriage. Sophia had been forced to confront the fact that she had unknowingly helped her father deceive her mother, and the guilt had motivated her to work twice as hard to rebuild their trust. Ladies and gentlemen, called Patricia Steinberg from the small stage at the front of the ballroom. I'd like to say a few words about the woman we're here to honor tonight. Camila felt herself flush with pleasure as the room quieted. Patricia had become not just a client but a genuine friend over the past year, and her endorsement carried enormous weight in Los Angeles society. 12 months ago, Camila Rodriguez showed us what real strength looks like, Patricia continued. She faced betrayal and theft with dignity, rebuilt her business with determination, and emerged stronger than ever. But more than that, she reminded us all that success means nothing without integrity. The applause was warm and sustained, and Camila found herself genuinely moved by the support of people who had chosen to stand by her during the most difficult period of her life. As Patricia returned to the crowd, Camila felt a gentle touch on her elbow. She turned to find Dr. Marcus Thompson, a prominent plastic surgeon whose Bel Air mansion she had recently redesigned. He was handsome in a distinguished way, with silver hair and kind eyes, and he had been asking her out for dinner with increasing frequency over the past few months. "Congratulations," he said quietly. "You've built something remarkable here." "Thank you, Marcus. That means a lot coming from you." They had been dancing around the possibility of a relationship for weeks, both of them cautious about moving too quickly. Camila's divorce had been finalized for only 6 months, and she was still adjusting to the idea of trusting someone new. But Marcus was patient, respectful, and clearly interested in her as a person rather than just a successful businesswoman. "I was wondering," he said, his voice barely audible over the party conversation, "if you might be free for dinner this weekend. Somewhere quiet where we can actually talk." Camila looked around the ballroom at the life she had built for herself. Her business was thriving, her relationship with Sophia was stronger than ever, and she was surrounded by people who genuinely respected and admired her accomplishments. For the first time in over a year, she felt ready to consider letting someone new into her carefully constructed world. "I'd like that very much," she replied. Later that evening, as the guests were departing and the staff was cleaning up, Miguel appeared at her side with a satisfied expression. "Great party, sister. But I have some news you're going to want to hear." "Good news or bad news?" "Depends on your perspective. Antonio was arrested yesterday on federal tax evasion charges. Apparently, he never reported the money he was stealing from your business to the IRS." Camila felt a brief moment of satisfaction, but it was tempered by exhaustion. She had spent so much energy over the past year focused on Antonio's destruction that she was tired of thinking about him at all. What about Natasha? Facing charges for blackmail and extortion. Turns out she made the mistake of trying to squeeze money out of that tech executive from Silicon Valley. He recorded their conversations and turned her in to the FBI. So both of the people who had betrayed her were finally facing serious legal consequences. Camila had always believed that justice would eventually catch up with them, but she was surprised to realize that their downfall didn't bring her the satisfaction she had expected. She was too busy building her new life to waste time celebrating the destruction of her old one. "Mom," Sophia called from across the ballroom, "the photographer wants to get some pictures of us together for the company website." Camila walked toward her daughter, thinking about how much both of their lives had changed over the past year. Sophia had dropped out of a sorority that had been draining her time and energy, focused on her studies and graduated with honors. She was dating a nice young man from her business ethics class, someone who shared her values and supported her career ambitions. As they posed for photographs in front of the elegant backdrop, Camila reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. 18 months ago, she had been a successful but naive wife, trusting completely in a marriage that had been built on lies. The discovery of Antonio's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also been liberating in ways she never could have imagined. She was no longer someone's wife, someone's business partner, someone's other half. She was Camila Rodriguez, successful entrepreneur, devoted mother, and completely independent woman. She owned her business, her homes, her future, and her choices entirely. "You look happy, Mom," Sophia said as the photographer finished his work. "I am happy," Camila replied, surprised by how true those words felt. "For the first time in years, I'm exactly where I want to be." The last guests were leaving when Camila's phone buzzed with a text message. For a brief moment, her stomach clenched with the old anxiety that had plagued her during the worst days of her divorce. But when she looked at the screen, she saw that the message was from Marcus. "Thank you for a lovely evening. Looking forward to our dinner this weekend. Sweet dreams." She smiled and slipped the phone back into her purse. Tomorrow she would return to her office and continue building the empire that belonged entirely to her. She would review proposals for new projects, meet with potential clients, and make decisions that would shape her company's future. But tonight, she was content to stand in the ballroom where she had once exposed her husband's betrayal and feel proud of everything she had accomplished since then. She had not just survived Antonio's deception, she had used it as fuel to build something better than she had ever imagined possible. As she gathered her things and prepared to leave, Camila took one last look around the crystal ballroom. This room had witnessed both the end of her old life and the celebration of her new one. It seemed fitting that her journey from betrayed wife to independent businesswoman should have played out in the same elegant space where Los Angeles's elite gathered to see and be seen. The valet brought her car around, and Camila settled into the driver's seat of the BMW she had bought for herself as a divorce present. As she drove through the quiet streets of Beverly Hills toward the home that belonged entirely to her, she thought about the future that stretched out before her like an open road. There would be new challenges, new opportunities, new relationships to navigate. But whatever came next, she would face it as herself, completely and authentically, without having to consider anyone else's agenda or accommodate anyone else's lies. Antonio and Natasha were facing the consequences of their choices in courtrooms and jail cells. But Camila was facing the consequences of her choices in boardrooms and ballrooms, surrounded by people who respected her talent and trusted her integrity. Justice, it turned out, was not just about punishment for the guilty. It was also about freedom for the innocent, and the chance to build something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. As she pulled into her driveway and looked up at the house she had designed and now owned completely, Camila smiled. Tomorrow would bring new possibilities, new projects, and maybe even new love. But tonight, she was simply grateful to be exactly who she was meant to be. A woman who had reclaimed her power and was using it to build the life she truly deserved.